as well. You know, you or anybody else that you may know in a crisis. Because sometimes you cannot help people, you know. You personally can't. As an unskilled person that's not used to dealing with it, you know, everybody can't handle that. So don't hesitate to call 911 because they are trained. Most of them are trained in that, you know, to help people in crisis. And I know recently they've actually been doing more training in different areas because sometimes you call the police and the person's having a mental health crisis and it turns out bad. So they have been doing extensive trainings with the police and emergency responders to be able to recognize, you know, when it's a crisis, a mental health crisis versus somebody just acting out. So that's very important. Okay. And they also have a line where you can actually text. Some people love to text and don't want to talk to somebody. And there's you can text home to 744-1741, and that's the text crisis line. So for those that love to text and don't want to talk, they have that available as well. Go ahead, please. Repeat, please. The number 741-741. And it just says text home to, and then put home to that number, HOME. Okay. And you just, that's the number, 741-741. Okay? And that's a good resource, you know. So just feel free to share it with anybody that you know that may need it. And it's, like I say, it's mainly an issue of untreated depression. And sometimes people just don't reach out and they just think it's like the end of the world and they don't get the help that they need. Also, I was looking at the statistics on suicide. So nearly 50,000 suicide deaths in 2020 alone. Wow. Yeah, it's right up at like 49,000 and some change. So right up about 50,000 deaths in 2020 alone. It's just 1 year. And that was the start of our pandemic. And they estimated that it was 12.2 million people thought about it. Didn't follow through, but at least admitted, you know, because they do surveys and admitted to it crossed their mind. That's a lot. 12.2 million. So that is not good. Close to 50,000 succeeded in 1 year. Okay. So, anybody have any thoughts or anything on the suicide topic?
I have a question because you talked about the total for 2020. What was the increase or what was the number prior to the pandemic?
You know what, I didn't look at all of the statistics on I just read the increases, and I didn't get the beginnings.
Okay.
But it has increased quite a bit. It was, I know from the close to the 50,000, it was like the lower 40s, and it spiked. But I didn't get the exact numbers.
So prior to the pandemic, it was in the 40,000s?
40,000 for, yes, 40,000 for, not just attempts, but successful suicides. So yes, it was still in the 40s, but it went closer to 50,000, so it did go up a lot. Okay. Yeah, all right. So yes, it's real, you know, it's just hard to call. It's really hard to call.
So my follow-up question then is, in the Black community, is our rate of suicide higher than any other ethnic group, or where do we fall?
I'm not going to say that we're exactly higher, but it does all the variables for our economic issues, the community, housing, mental health, because the education is a big factor of people just not being educated, not seeking resources and getting help. Insurance is a factor. So we do fall in there, but we have the Hispanics, and we are among the highest group. But it still also varies, depending on the variables that come into play. So we're up there.
What is the leading cause of suicide in the past 10 years, or in general, and why do you think those causes have increased so much over the past 10 years? So I guess the main question is, what's the leading cause of suicide? I know you said untreated depression.
So we have the variables to deal with it. So we also have economic factors. We have social media factors. Social media plays a large role. And social media is very powerful, very powerful. And unfortunately for some of our younger adults, they like to perform and do different things on social media that they normally wouldn't do in real life. But, they're showing out, acting out, and doing a lot of stuff. They've had suicides on social media. They've had murders on social media. Yeah, live, because they could go live and record it. There's been a lot of suicidal recordings on social media, so it does play a huge role. Yes, it's so over the past 10 years, that's something that has had a big impact on suicide rate and mental health in itself. Just the aspect of, I don't know what people get out of it. Everybody thinks different, but in some people's head, they love showing out on social media. They'll record it. They'll record it, send it to friends. It's wild. So social media has played a major role over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we didn't have all of that. We had some, but not like we do today. It's a lot of aspects when it comes to social media. You got Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, just so much stuff out there. And they use it. Society uses it.
You mentioned the adolescents. So I guess you're kind of answering these questions in your conversation. But why do you think it has increased so much in teens and adolescents? The age group that you talked about, from 12 to 24.
The social media. The social media is a major role. Wow. That adolescent age group between the 10 and 24. 12 to 24, yes. Social media has played a major role in for what was that? Probably 20 years before the pandemic, 2019, maybe 2018, 19. It was like a real epidemic for our teens.
Really? Even before the pandemic?
It was very high.
Wow.
Yes, a bunch of kids. Bunch of them. Just sad, but a lot of that. So we got all the different variables, the demographics, we got the demographics, occupations, housing issues, economics. We just got a lot of variables. And when we come to those type of resources that can fix those variables, it's usually a long waiting list, no help, and people give up, honestly, because this don't appear to be a way out. So there's a huge factor.
So you think that seeking and getting the help of a therapist or psychologist would improve the rate of suicide?
I do. I think it would help a lot because a lot of people that do unfortunately commit suicide, if they would just had somebody to talk to, somebody that got them to medication, Not saying medication is going to be a good thing for everybody because people don't want medication. medication. Some people don't want to take it. But I think just knowing that you have options, it would help. And yeah, it would turn you to some resources. Because one thing about mental health and seeking a therapist or a psychiatrist, we cannot allow, knowing somebody comes to us suicidal, we cannot allow them to leave us knowing they're suicidal. We have to admit them. If they're suicidal, we 1013, it's called 1013, and we can't let them go. We have to get them hospitalized, try to give them some help. But if that person, it's a trick to it too, because if the person goes in and get evaluated by the doctor and says, I'm not suicidal, I'm not homicidal, and they believe them, they let them go. So it's kind of that kind of situation. And I'm sure it happens sometimes when people don't tell the truth because they don't want to get locked up for 3 days. Basically 3 days, 72 hours they can keep you. So that's a lot of what mental health is, a tricky situation. It really is. It is very tricky. So you do have to kind of, especially if you're helping on the helping end of it, try to remain strong for that person and try to guide them the best you can. Try to get them some professional help. One thing Georgia is good with though, they have plenty of resources. They really do. Now, are they going to put everybody that's suicidal, catch everybody that's suicidal? They're not. But they do have resources for those who are willing to get them. They have fee-for-service, meaning they have places in the community that people can go. They don't have insurance. They have community health boards in pretty much every county throughout Georgia. I did research that. So our Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, just Google, what is it, DBHDD, that's the initials. So if you put it in the computer, dbhdd.gov, it'll pull up that website. And on there you can pretty much find almost any type of help that you want for any county, for most of Georgia counties. So yeah, they do pretty good with that. Yeah. So any more questions on the suicide topic? I pretty much understand that. Okay. So our next topic I think it's very important that we cover like grief due to the COVID pandemic. Because some families, I've talked to people who are counseling that call me up, I lost 3 or 4 people in one family. Devastation, and how do you move past that? It's hard, and a lot of people just don't know how, and it's hard to even counsel, honestly, to counsel somebody that has that much grief. Because nothing really heals grief except for time. It kind of gets a little easier. But losing 3 or 4 people at the same time, that's kind of rough, very rough. So that is a big thing for our communities right there. A lot of people are just trying to make it through this pandemic. And it's not it's almost seems like it's an everlasting pandemic. We're still wearing masks, we're still doing what we have. The numbers have dropped, thank goodness, but there's still a lot of pain out there. A lot of people have lost several people. So we got to think about that aspect of it too. Be very supportive and we're helping hand. A lot of people, they're turning to their faith in churches, to get by. So, any questions on the grief?
What would be your suggestion or recommendation for a person who has is going through the grieving process, not necessarily related to COVID, but just in general, because deaths that were non-COVID related have their own unique set of circumstances, and that we were not able to come together as a family and have a memorial service or grieve like you normally would. So
Right.
what have you found to be helpful?
In those cases, that's true, you know, because they were only in the beginning allowing person even getting a service, yeah, for the last viewing, none of that normal stuff that we, you know, will get a chance to mourn the person, get a chance to come together at the wake, and then after, you know, the dinner times and all of that, you miss all of that, so it doesn't, you don't really get proper closure.
That's the
People
word.
haven't, yeah, people haven't been getting proper closures. And it's just so messed up, but, I mean, I have actually a person who lived next door to my mother in Colorado, and they just did 2 services because the first service was so botched. And they recently, this past weekend, did a whole nother service where they set up videos of the person, how they do the video streams. They did that, and they actually had a repast, this was called a repast, and they did all of that. It was months later, a long time later, but they needed it because they weren't healing. And that was their personal choice to do it that way, because they just felt like it was never really right.
That's an interesting concept to take the time later and get back together and really find some closure amongst the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who, in fact, that's what they said, so, but, you know, we just did a graveside, and next year, you know, or whenever, you know, it's better, we'll do something.
The anniversary maybe.
Yeah.
Because people just aren't getting the closure that they need, and they almost feel like we didn't even give them a proper burial, you know? So that's what, you know, my mom's thing they did for their son. And that was just this past weekend in Colorado where they live at. But it was nice. It was much nicer than that first rush event. Yeah.
London, I know London, my son, his uncle died from overdose in the pandemic. They couldn't have a funeral for him. First of all, it took almost 6 weeks just to get the death certificate. So it's a long process to figure out when he overdosed from, what drug he was taking and stuff.
Yes.
And they ended up doing a cremation. They did it before, but they did it outside, you know, and the family came in so everybody could be distant but close to finally say goodbye because everybody was grieving for so long that they just lost their mother less than a year from it.
Okay.
And they just did a balloon release with some, you know, the electric slide a few times, you know, just just to lighten it up, to remember him. But yeah, it was a lot because he was dealing with a lot mentally once his mother passed away.
Yes.
And fentanyl is a very strong drug. It don't take that much to overdose.
Right.
So, you want to talk about this drug use and?
We're dealing with the grief part. Really kind of connect.
Oh, no, okay.
I know when the pandemic first started, my grandma, she already had heart problems and couldn't breathe as well.
Okay.
So she had COVID, but the COVID didn't take her out, it was pneumonia right behind it. So at the time where the family couldn't really go inside the building to even to view her body because it was like no one knew really anything about it because it just hit.
Okay.
So we was kind of devastated because we had to stay outside. We were like, we can't see them, and then we had to go in one by one, and when we did go in, they couldn't allow everybody to be inside the building.
Okay.
So it was kind of tough, but I like the idea to where we should got back together and kind of did something to grieve together because for a black family, we don't really talk about it. We just kind of hold it in and say, well, cry little tears and just go about our life. But I wish we'd have had that, be able to actually come together for the memorial. But that's a really great idea.
I think,
And you made it.
Anniversary or whatever,
Right.
make you choose.
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's a that's a great concept that has been brought up, and that as families and caring for our mental health, maybe that family should come. It doesn't matter if it was last year, it doesn't matter if it was 6 months ago, but when the family can come together and caring for their mental health and the grieving process to get together and just talk about it instead of, like Ricola was saying, just letting it cry a few tears and keep on going.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think that'd be very healthy. Get together, even if it's just something small, you know, and again, get some closure. Because it was, you know, it's been a rush process over the last couple of years. Really rushed. Okay. So we'll move on to the substance abuse. So, substance abuse is widespread. It's very widespread. Some of the states are legalizing they have legalized marijuana, and some of them haven't. Georgia haven't. I'm from Colorado originally. Colorado has legalized it, so you got different states doing different things. And they're trying to push, I got an email the other day, they're trying to push Georgia into join the board with their rights. The marijuana is the #1 most abused drug that there is. And that is factual. Following marijuana is heroin, and cocaine. And lately, over the last couple of years, it is being tainted with fentanyl. The heroin and the cocaine being tainted with fentanyl. And it's causing a lot of deaths as well, because people just aren't expecting that, and you don't know that you're using it, because somebody put it in there trying to most likely stretch their product, and it's killing people. We also have the opioid addiction crisis in there, so drugs are, you know, pretty bad. And it's a lot to it, and unfortunately, it's one of the harder things for people to overcome. Addiction. It's really rough a lot of times, especially depending on what it is they're addicted to. So, but there's help out there. They gotta be willing to get. You know, a lot of people relapse. Once you're off the drugs, you do it's best to stay in a recovery program. You know, where you can have the support groups, have the meetings, and try your best to stay clean. Because it's really a difficult process for most people. I'm not saying nobody ever becomes clean and stays clean, but it's a difficult process. Very difficult. Your mind, when you're on drugs, your mind gets addicted to them, your brain, you know, it changes. You got chemical changes going on with the brain, you got all kinds of stuff going on. So when it's altered like that, it's very hard to get back to normal, quote unquote normal. So it is a difficult process.
You spoke about the brain and how our body and our brain gets used to this drug. So can you give us more information about how that works?
Addiction?
On addiction.
Well, actually, that probably would be better to explain by a doctor.
Okay.
But I do know it happens.
Okay.
But as far as what it bonds to in the brain, because I know it changes, it's chemically changed. So I do know that takes place. And it's very hard for once it's altered like that, to get back to normal. And then cigarette smoking, you know, which is a drug, but people usually just don't associate cigarette smoking as being a drug, but nicotine is a drug too, and it does some altering. Yeah, some imprinted in the brain, and that's what makes you crave it. I didn't know that much. But as far as in depth with changes in there, I couldn't. I just know it's hard to get back to.
It's hard to get back to normal.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work and a lot of commitment. So once it's altered, it's kind of altered for pretty much ever, but you gotta work at staying clean. You gotta work at it. You gotta get there, recovery. And a lot of people are getting lifetime, recovery for a lifetime. Have support groups and, yeah. So, Georgia does have, I got, a couple of pamphlets that I brought in with me. Peachford Hospital, they have a good recovery program. And a lot of them work best when you're committed to at least 30 days to clean up, to get detox and all of that. Peachford Hospital has a good one. And then there's another one this is further out north, and it's substance abuse and mental health counseling, but it's not a hospital, but it's counseling, the outpatient. Peachford has inpatient and outpatient. There's also one closer to here, which is called, got it wrote down here, Anchor Hospital, which is in College Park. Yes, and that's one, they have some good counseling programs there, and they have the detox, where you can admit yourself for 30 days, so they have a lot of good programs.
So, I have a question. How easy or how hard is it to get into those?
If you're willing, most of them will get a bed for you pretty fast. But a lot of people, like I say, trying to get them to commit, because you got to commit to going to the hospital for 30 days. And a lot of people don't want to do that. And a lot of people will go and they won't stay. So it's being real and really committed to it. Any other questions? But the help is there, just getting people to utilize it. It's kind of hard sometimes. Even for counseling, there's so many stigmas behind counseling in itself, just getting mental health counseling. People just don't want to do it. They feel like they can pray away, they could just be stronger, and get better. But a lot of times it really needs a professional, may even need medication. And it can happen.
Here at FreedomNChrist, we do have a recovery group, and we do make it. Some of us have made it a lifetime. I have made it a lifetime experience.
Okay.
The next step in this mental health awareness is making others aware of the ideal of going further and getting professional help. So I guess I'm leading to this question of how can we encourage others to, what might we do that will be encouraging to others to lead them to the path of if it's something that, of course, we couldn't handle in this group because we are not professionals, to kind of lead them into going to the next step.
Just basically encouraging words, A lot of people, my first thing when I recommend counseling to some people that haven't been, I'm not crazy. That's the first response. Nobody says you are crazy. People have a stigma behind it. If I go see a counselor, I'm crazy. No, you're not. Crazy people don't know they're crazy. They just be out there doing stuff, and they don't have an idea. So no, if you call up to get help and you actually know you need help for something, no, nobody's calling you crazy. Nobody. But that's the first thing they want to say is, I'm not crazy, but I can say you're crazy. Just think you need something. And then when I do like the assessment on people, a lot of times I hear, I don't need medication, but you do. You're just not willing to take it. And everybody's not willing to take it. But if you're having episodes every 2-3 months and you're having to take off of work, need some jobs, and have to get fired, you might need some medication or you can stay balanced.
Because there could be this chemical imbalance you're talking about.
Exactly.
And that chemical imbalance would need some medication.
Yeah.
And I know that's not everybody,
No.
but
It's
there's
not.
somebody. That's one of my favorite sayings. It's not everybody, but it's somebody.
This is true. some buy, and some people need it.
I have a question. A lot of time in our community, I see a lot of people with, I know a lot of people with mental illnesses and stuff, but they substitute the absence of their prescriptions for, recreational drugs. Why do you think they prefer the recreational drugs over the prescription drugs? Is that about the stigmatism that people get when they go, oh, that's crazy John? His prescription
A
taking
lot,
this.
yeah, a lot of times you have that stigmatism, well, especially marijuana. Everybody thinks marijuana is a cure-all drug, yeah, cures everything. And a lot of people don't take it into consideration, because I've done a million assessments on people, and they admit to using marijuana. So, have you ever gave yourself time not to use marijuana to see if that drug wasn't triggering these episodes that you have? Because people don't realize that marijuana can trigger paranoia. It can trigger all of this stuff. Yeah. It can even mimic schizophrenia, depending on what you do.
So you use the word mimic. That means that they could seem like they're schizophrenic, but really not if they were just stop. I've never heard that part.
Yeah, drug abuse.
Wow.
Yeah. And it could look just like schizophrenia, or, schizoaffective, which is like some of the hallucinations, but you never stop using long enough to see if it was the drug versus your mental.
Wow.
But at this point, it is your mental, because you've altered it with the medication, with the marijuana. So, the stopping marijuana cure the problem, it may.
So you think educating our community about the drug use, not just the DARE program where they come and they just like, oh, don't smoke, don't drink, but really educate you on the side effects and the mental effect that it has on you, as well as increasing mental health tools at a younger age in school that people can recognize, because home life is totally different than school life, and a lot of times they go home and they see it as normal.
Right.
So so early education.
Early education would be great, and they did used to do. They still do the DARE.
I
haven't heard about it in a long time.
You make jokes about it on TikTok. I don't know if they.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then you got the society in the different states are cocaine and use, but then the full story is not out there. The full story. I'm just like, someone with marijuana, I don't think it's a good idea, personally. Because I'm originally from Colorado, and just going to visit there now since marijuana has been legal. There's so many homeless people in Colorado, and it's horrible. It's never been like that. It didn't really get like that to the legalization of marijuana in that state. They got tents, literally. It's cold, like 0 degrees outside. But people sleeping outside, tents, people have moved to that state just because it's legal to use marijuana there, which is bizarre to me, but it's true.
So we've been talking about this, to make a short phrase, self-medicating. That's what we do when we decide that recreational drugs is going to help us self-medicating. And we talk about better education from an early age about what that means to improve the mental health in our community. There's another factor that I'd like to bring out that's concerning drugs, and that is prescribed drugs. People share their prescribed drugs. And then there are health issues that require medication that people end up abusing and misusing because they started out needing it. But then that need turned into, oh, this feels good. And so you keep using it and keep using it, and the next thing you know, They just go back to the doctor. It amazes me. Get another prescription.
Oh, yeah. That's true. That is true.
And I know people in my neighborhood, right? Who sell their prescription drugs. They make it
It's a
a business of selling their prescription drugs.
Yeah. It's a very
To others.
widespread problem. Definitely widespread problem.
So how could a person, have a health issue and be more aware of not allowing that health issue to come to an abuse of the prescribed drug that they're using?
That is kind of big. I mean, that's depending on that person. Because I've seen people in the office, like the clinical direct, will come in there, and the doctor will get in there, they lose their prescriptions, quote unquote, lose them, will take what they don't lose. Most of the time, they usually just overuse them. So they'll be like, they lost them, somebody stole them, and the doctor won't give them no more prescriptions until it's time for that refill. Because you can't get certain prescriptions within 30 days of each other. So they won't give them no more prescriptions, and they literally will fall out, have fits, get 1013 to the hospital because they didn't have any more medication. So those were like fits. And so yeah. They do it.
This change. For the person with mental illness, now if the family member think they're in a crisis,
Okay.
call the crisis center. People comes out, they assess the person. They don't feel that the person is detrimental. Okay, but the
Okay.
family member can explain this has escalated. So I think the person needs to go somewhere, but they refuse to send them. They give you a piece of paper and say, go down and get this, that, and the other done. And it takes them 2 to 3 days. Within that time limit, that person you think is escalated could have been went off and not hurt themselves or someone else.
You're
What's
right.
up with that?
You are right, but it's the law. It's the law, federal law. So you can't just take a person and lock them up. Like, I think it personally, I think it needs to change. The law needs to kind of change. But it's the law. You cannot, from state to state, you cannot, if somebody's saying, if I come and I call
I'm fine.
search for you and you say you're fine, you're not a threat to yourself, you're not gonna hurt yourself, you promise you're not gonna hurt nobody else, they're not locking you up.
But if the person is there to do the assessment of that person that has illness, and they can see, they should generally be able to pick up, they done been trained, they should be able to pick up signs.
They
Well,
have
this
to do
person-
something in that person's sight.
Yeah.
Oh,
they have to
this
do
person being a threat to themselves or others, you can't just assume that they are. That person, if that person tells you they're not a threat to themselves and they're not gonna harm nobody else.
And they knock something over,
And
like not a piece
you
of
have
furniture over
it
their
visually,
head.
yeah, and you have it
And they won't
visually,
take them out of the steel.
okay, you haven't visually laid eyes on that person harming themselves. So now, if you call somebody and you say, okay, well, and it gotta be witnesses, you can't just say this about people, because it could be people lying, get you locked up, so you can't just by yourself
I
say,
know when you
you
have to
have
go
to
down.
have more than,
Yeah, you have to go, when you go to
witness.
the paperwork, they want to have to info.
Yeah, and you gotta have proof, you can't just blame a person and say that, because just imagine how many, somebody get mad if they don't throw you and, lock you up, so you can't just do that. And it's law, you can't. They gotta be physically, even if I was to 1013 somebody, which is putting them, calling the law and it's in the ambulance and taking them, I have to have a witness besides myself saying that this person did this action, that action, that action. And then I fill out the paperwork and then the EMTs will transport there.
What I hear in this is within families is that often, and this is my interpretation, often within families, there are things going on within the family.
Okay.
And you know what's said? Don't tell nobody what's going on in here.
Don't worry about it.
No, don't tell anybody.
Oh,
Don't tell
okay.
nobody what's in our house, stays in our house.
Yeah.
That's a detriment to our community.
It
What
is.
goes on in our house, stays in our house. No.
And a lot of kids are raised that way. You know,
And a lot of children are raised that way, teenagers and adults.
Right.
And what I would like to say about it, in response to Miss Annie's circumstance and what she was trying to explain to us, is that another thing we could do in our community, instead of saying what's in our house stays in our house, is to be more friendly or build relationships with neighbors that I don't know that we do that enough anymore. If we build relationships with neighbors and then we have the support of neighbors or other families, sometimes it's them my cousin them.
Right.
Even if you call in your cousin them to come in with you to support each other, and that way this witness that you're talking about will be within the family, the cousin them, or the neighbor.
Yeah.
And instead of us in the community trying to allow and have things to stay within the household.
Right.
We can't handle everything within the household by ourselves, even though we think we can.
And I think the laws need to change, but you know, that's a whole other subject. Because it's leaving a lot of people in. Sometimes the police come and they don't know how to handle it, and then you have somebody deceased, you know, because they were threat to somebody. So it's a mess.
But the thing about having a mentally challenged person in the family knows this person has a mental challenge. They stay away. You cannot get them to come together. So you don't have that support.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So support is very important,
It is.
that we come together and support one another in the families, in the neighborhood, within the body, within this family of God here.
Yeah. And a lot of people want to give up on people.
Yeah.
They totally give up on people. There's a lot of homeless people out here in the world. They got a whole bunch of family. But they can't live with them. They can't stay with them. It's the work. A lot of work to be done. Any other questions?
You mentioned that personally you didn't think that marijuana should be legal, right?
Yeah.
And what, I have one question in terms of the organization of licensed professional counsel association, or the legal,
That's my question.
organization. Okay. So has that organization taken a stand
For,
for marijuana being legal or not legal?
I mean, no.
No.
Mm.
That's what I thought.
I just leave it alone, you know. I have a DUI school inside of my office, and they do, well, now they have kind of not really legalized the internet, but they don't arrest you like they used to do for like a little bit of marijuana, a little doobie, or what they call them, the little roaches so they don't arrest you like they used to. When I first started the DUI school in 2012, I had people that would come for a little bitty marijuana, you know. Well, I just smelled like marijuana, and they found a little bitty roach in my ashtray, you know. And they were criminalizing people for that. So now they don't do that too much here in Atlanta. If it's a small amount like that, they usually don't. But they were taking driver's license for a year, you know, stuff like that. So it's my personal choice not to, you know, use marijuana. But some people who's gonna use it regardless.
No, I mean, in your counseling profession, you're counseling someone. Say someone comes in and they say, well, I use marijuana, and I just used to take the edge off.
Will I advise against it?
Things are just so hard, you know.
I educate, I just educate them. I try to educate them, but if they want to smoke marijuana, they want to smoke marijuana. But I do let them know that it can induce this anxiety that you're talking about. You're talking about you have anxiety, you have panic attacks. It might be marijuana.
And marijuana does do the same as some of the other drugs in terms of the chemical change in your brain. Right. But most people don't see it that way. They're just like, it's just marijuana.
Yeah.
It's just taking the edge off. It just calms me down. All of these things, but not the reality of it, as you said, the education of our community. That it's a serious drug just like any other.
Yeah.
Especially if it's abused, if you're innocent. If you need to take the edge off every day, there's a problem.
It is. It is. And then just the anxiety part and the panic attacks people complain about, they don't relate it. And marijuana makes me calm down.
Yes. So I've heard that so many times.
Right.
It really got one time in life. I actually ended up in the hospital over a marijuana overdose. And literally it was the hallucinations, the throwing up, you name it, they thought I was on everything else. Yes, and no, I'm making one next train over, but more importantly,
And now look at it.
it's serious. It's like, it was serious. I have a heart condition, they was ready for me to die, it was that serious.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, you don't think that. I think I may have had more anxiety at that moment. But I'm like, you know what, y'all? I'm about to die. Tell my mom I love her, she was sitting right there with me all the time, didn't even know. It was just, it's not as fun as what everybody make it seem, like it's a hippie lifestyle. It's you really have to be responsible with anything you put in your body, anything from food, from water, to drugs and medication. Is now I get prescription drugs, I ask for the lowest doses of everything. They let you, nah. You can't go no lower than that, I don't need it.
Okay. Yeah. So.
It's serious.
Yeah, Pastor Hamilton, I did meet you.
Hi,
I'd like to talk to you a little bit after. Thank you for coming and giving us your wisdom and insight. I just wanted you to just speak a little bit about when we talk about support, we talk about caregivers of people that are trying to recover,
Okay.
and you want to be a support system for those that are recovering, but you have the reality that while they're struggling from withdrawal, while they're struggling with going back and forth between using the drug, they have certain habits, they become violent, they steal things and all of that.
Right.
And I think that speaks to the aspect of how some people get abandoned and left and become homeless because it becomes a lot.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, you had the addict, would you take care of? But how do you also, as a caregiver, find that level of relief or balance between taking care of who needs to be taken care of, but also taking care of self in a responsible way?
And that's probably what our community lacks.
Yeah.
It really lacks that. Because you get fed up, you get tired, you get frustrated with the person and you stop. And that's why we got a lot of people out there that's not getting help, because it's lax. People just get tired of doing it. Family particularly. Because you would meet people in certain situations where they don't have family, but they have a whole bunch of family. But this mental health in itself is not really the drugs, the drug part. It's not drugs, it's just mental health. People get tired of just even dealing with people with mental health issues and they quit on them.
Well, what do you know of the resources that are available for the caregiver? Have you heard of any things that?
Not unless there's well, they got the respite and, the respite houses, but hospice houses for respite, because I know they have those, but the person got to be, certain criteria to meet those, but just your average, not really. Not really at all. Okay. Nope, I'm gonna let Mr. Luana and stay away. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Ms. Perry. Thank you so much for being so much
You are welcome.
came and shared with us. We heard about, self-medicating, we heard about being a support, we heard about suicide, we got some information about how you can get help with suicide. We learned that one of the main things, concerning, why there is suicide is untreated depression. We talked about the need for getting help and having someone to talk to. And we talked about family support, we talked about community support, and we talked about a lot of things. And I can't wait to share this video so that we can share it with others who all will be interested in looking at it. But this was a great mental health awareness night. And so we're gonna close this part out and say that unless somebody else has something burning on the inside. FreedomNChrist meets on a weekly basis, and we're meeting on Zoom until we can meet here on a regular basis or have a community site where we can meet. So we're looking forward to that. That's what I'm looking forward to that. I get so excited when we can come together. I know we see each other face to face on Zoom. Every week we talk to each other. But it's something different about being in each other's presence. Next week, we are going into the month of April. And so we will be on step 4. Step 4, we made a personal and inventory of our lives. So after this step 3, where we decided to turn our lives over to Christ, we're going to take in step 4 to allow God to reveal to us how do we get to this point in our lives. And only God sometimes can reveal to us because we've been in it so long that we don't even know anymore. But I'm looking forward to God revealing to each one of us what it is He sees in us and what it is He wants to work out of us. So that's step 4 we'll be looking forward to next month. Our topic for next week is accountability. Accountability. We're going to begin to talk about how we will be accountable to one another in the group, have an accountability partner or a sponsor to help us through the rest of the year on the rest of the 12 steps. And so I thank you for coming, and we're going to close this meeting with our prayer of serenity. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting as Jesus did this world as it is, not as I would have it. And I have to memorize those in a circle.
Trusting that He will make all
Trusting
things
that
right.
He will make all things right.
If
If
surrender to His will.
I surrender to His will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy